Let's go to Memphis.
My sleeping giant.
I love this team. I love where Memphis is right now. The first question here is a very simple one, and I think we just have to start it. You extend Ja Morant very quickly this offseason, correct?
As quickly as you can. Now, the only exception to that is I am extremely uncomfortable giving fifth-year player options. Danny Ainge, and I guess at that point, it's funny because it was the Celtics and the Jazz, and now Danny Ainge is running the Jazz. But so giving Mitchell and Tatum player options in that fifth year might burn the Grizzlies with Ja, because it's like, can you unring that bell? And because the reason there is that you lose so much control as the Grizzlies. You prevent them from getting the free agency a year earlier, and it being a player option means that you assume they're going to make the right decision. So if, heaven forbid, there's a reason why picking up that option is better for Ja Morant than becoming a free agent, then he would just do that. So I think I would hold the line there. I would be willing to do that, but anything short of that, you just do it.
I would look. Ja Morant has been nothing but complimentary about Memphis, to the point where I would bet he just signs the 5-year extension. Like, I think that he just goes straight with it. The other concern here worth noting for Memphis, and this isn't something that they can know ahead of time, they're obviously going to give him the Supermax language in the contract. If he makes All NBA next season or wins MVP or whatever, he will have a contract that is 5 years, 222 million or so. If he does not make All NBA next season, it will be 5 years, 186 million. That is an enormous difference that will obviously play a critical role in how Memphis builds its roster moving forward. Speaking of building its roster, sleeping giant for sure. They have potential for cap space depending on what they do with two of their key free agents in Kyle Anderson and Tyus Jones. Now, how Memphis handles this is going to be really interesting, because like you, I think where you want to go with this, I assume, is that you think Memphis can make a consolidation trade that brings them a star, right?
I think they should try at bare minimum. Unfortunately, I don't know which player is available, but Memphis also has assets. Like, they have extra first-round picks. They have, unlike when we were talking about the Mavs earlier, they have young players that are interesting to other teams, like Brandon Clark and potentially DeAnthony Melton. So you could, I'm not going to say Desmond Bane is untouchable, but it would be very hard for him to be included in any sort of deal. So I think the best of the best, like my best case scenario for Memphis for a long time had been Jaylen Brown. Call it instinct, but I don't think Jaylen Brown is going to be eminently available during this offseason. But there's still lots of players that could help them. And then the other reason that Memphis is a sleeping giant is because they could do a lot of different structures here. So that could be free agent X is very interesting to them, whether that is, TJ Warren, who I think would be a wonderful fit there, or they could go with, they could go at a different spot. But then the other thing that Memphis can do is they could go after somebody that's under contract, and they could either match salary with guys that they have, or they could do the hybrid like they did last offseason, actually, of cap space and salary. So maybe you include some, but then you also save the other team some money. And I don't think you empty the war chest for OG Anunoby, but I think what you do is you're, as Zach Kleiman, calling everybody and seeing what you can shake loose, and hopefully you can shake somebody who can be, the dream is the third or better best player on the Grizzlies moving forward.
Early on, I was trying to decide if I thought Rudy Gobert was an interesting one for them. I don't know how I feel about cashing in your assets for a center in general. I don't know.
Especially a center who's on the older side,
especially a center that doesn't really fit their age timeline. Right. I really wonder if a critical consideration for them would be, hey, instead of trying to consolidate for a star, let's try to consolidate to move up in the draft.
Sure. And I mean, they did that was a big part of the trade they did last year. Like, they moved from Valanciunas to Adams, and a big part of that was betting on their board. And also the Grizzlies, I mentioned this earlier, they lost one of the picks that they were hoping to get, but the Grizzlies still have, they have a couple picks this year, and then they also have bonus. I call them bonus first. So first from other teams. They have the Warriors pick in 24, which could be. I mean, I don't think that's going to be super juicy, but it could be potentially
Right.
interesting. So, some combination of that. And is there a player that in the like? I don't think you can necessarily get in the top 5, but is there a player in the 6 to 20 range that you're like, oh,
Right.
this is the person? Because Memphis has made some bets on their board before, and that could work
Yep.
out well.
Yeah, I mean, they moved up to get Zaire Williams. They moved up to get Desmond Bain. Did they move up for anyone else? I'm trying to
I think
remember.
for Clark, that was that involved in the
I
Matisse
believe they
Thybulle,
did.
or was that it was something like that.
No, the Thibault one, I believe, was Grant Williams, but I do think they moved up a couple spots to get Brandon Clark as well. I think you're right there. So, yeah, I mean, this is a team that has been willing to be aggressive moving up the board. I wonder if they could look at something like, if I've always found the way that they've used Brandon Clark to be very interesting. I don't know that they have quite used him in the way that I thought I thought Brandon Clark was going to be very, very good. And I still think Brandon Clark's going to be very, very good. I wonder how comfortable they are paying him. And if they kind of make a decision this offseason, maybe we're willing to pay him, maybe we're not willing to pay him. I wonder if they could look at like moving Brandon Clark in 22 up for number, I don't know. What pick do you think Brandon Clark in 22 could get?
Maybe like 13, depending on how much teams like. I mean, the generally top 10 picks are hard to come by.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know that Brandon Clark gets you from 22 to the top 10, but if a guy that is in the top 10 on their board, or in the top 7 on their board, which in the past has proven to be very good, they have done an incredible job evaluating, falls to number 12, number 13. Could you do something like that? I don't know. I really like Brandon Clark. I wouldn't trade him, but I'm just kind of throwing that out there. The 2 free agency decisions, though, Tyus Jones and Kyle Anderson. Tyus feels like a more important piece for them, weirdly, to me, because of Ja Morant's health issues previously. I don't know if I would want to retain him. They have up until June 30th to give him like a 3-year, $40 million extension, $42 million extension, something like that, if they would want to. Or they
can just use bird rights. I mean, the good news for the Grizzlies is they have full bird rights, and so what they can do, and also like a lot of what I'm talking about in terms of their potential big swings are trades, which means you can know ahead of time. So for Tyus, what you can say is I don't think they want to break the bank for their backup point guard, even though he plays a lot, both with Ja Morant and replacing Ja Morant. But you can tell him it might take us a day or two to figure this out, though. Generally speaking, the NBA, it doesn't take a day or two to figure these things out. But if we are able to retain you, we can do better than the non-taxpayer mid-level, which is the best he reasonably can be, unless like Detroit comes calling. Like, I don't think anybody's giving Tyus Jones more than that. So for him, waiting a day or two, you're probably still going to have the same offers on the table if it's not Memphis, and so you can give them the latitude.
I've been trying to figure out if there's a guy from Memphis that's like a little bit under the radar. I wonder if you could do something for Malcolm Brogdon.
Brogdon is an option. My thought has been like, would they do like a second draft thing like DeAndre Hunter, and say, we believe that we can assess, like they've done such a good job in the draft. Maybe it's somebody who they liked in a prior year, but they didn't have the capacity to have them, and so you go, let's get that guy. The other one that I've been talking about a little bit is Miles Bridges, who went to Michigan State with somebody named Jaren Jackson Jr., who is a wonderful fit with their group and is a pending free agent for Charlotte, a team that has been loath to spend a lot of money. So can you go to the Hornets and say, we're going to pay him a bunch of money. We don't think you're going to match, but we'll give you a little bit of a sweetener just to expedite this process. And so you give them somebody who would help just to facilitate, but not like a premium thing.
They would have to sign and trade in Bridges, which would mean Charlotte would have to go along with it in some regard.
Yeah.
They can't get to 28 million or whatever it's going to cost to get Bridges.
They could if they had to. Like they could move players that are under contract if they,
that's true, I guess.
But But then you have to have the intel. Then why it'd be a sign and trade also is just because it's so much more logical logistically, because you're not going to clear the space to make Miles Bridges a $28 million offer if you don't know if the Hornets are going to match or not, because it's too risky. Teams just don't do that.